Chief Seattle said, the one English speeches to the Wachichu or the great man. Towards the end of his speech, he was talking about the people that had passed away. And he said, and to the dead, he said, dead. Did I say dead? There is no such thing as dead. There's only a passing of time into another world. And so I'm sure that our brother is always with us in that way. In our lifetime, we meet many peoples. We come across many strong people. And sometimes it's hard to let those strong people go. But it's a lesson for us. Yeah. I remember I read a lot about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, and later on Kwame Ture. I never got the pleasure to meet Kwame Ture until 1979 in Washington, D.C. There was at that time an official for Leonard Peltier in trying to get another trial for him. In 1979, we burned the American flag, that Yankee rag, in front of the FBI building in Washington, D.C. And another revolutionary brother, John Fidel, was wearing that flag around him before it got burned. And it was 24 hours later, after that flag was burned, and his wife was pregnant, 3 of his children, and his mother-in-law were also burned in Duck Valley, Nevada. So it was heavy price for that flag. But John Fidel understood. He knew, because this was a revolutionary act. And we know that the oppressor is always going to come after us to steal and fear into us. But we must be aware that the only thing to fear is the fear itself. Kwame Ture, I would say, was a revolutionary all his life until the moment he passed. He was very revolutionary, and he was for the African people. He always made it very clear that he was for the African people. But he was for the African people in Africa, to take Africa and liberate Africa. And in North America or the United States, our homeland that we call Turtle Island, that he recognized that this was our homeland. And he was in solitary with us all the time in our homeland. And if it came to reparations, we know that Stokely Carmichael would put us in the front lines. Kwame Ture was a very strong brother. I traveled with him in California. I ran into him various times throughout our travels. And whenever I encountered him, he always brought me up to the front to speak. He always had his arms around me. He was a very strong brother, good friend, good comrade, and we're all missing. But he was one of the many. And this revolution must continue. And it's an example that we must follow for the future generations. We must liberate not only our physical bodies, but first of all, we must liberate our minds. We must liberate our spirits. And when we liberate our spirits, that means that we give up the addiction to colonialism. That means that we willingly give up any form of oppressive means that have been used against any people, such as Chief Waku and the Cleveland Indians, the Land of Braves, Washington, Michigan, so forth and so on. So, in all true solitary, may the Great Spirit bless Kwame Ture, all African people, and all indigenous people and all human beings throughout the world in the struggle for liberation. Thank you.
All right. Now, when we start these demonstrations again, we expect to see some of y'all down there when we go support Native people to get their land back and get rid of that racist emblem, G-Bible, and the name Indian. That's right. Ture was a student in SNCC. In 1966, of course, he called for Black Power. By the time 1967 rolled around, SNCC was in trouble. We believe that the Zionist forces began to destroy SNCC. And at that point in time, SNCC said, hell no, we won't go. That was the rallying cry against the Vietnam War. Kwame proceeded to make links with what would become the Black Panther Party for self-defense. In fact, Kwame had organized the first Black Panther Party in Miles County, Alabama, 1965, that had the symbol of the Black Panther. When Huey Newton and Elvis Cleveland came along, they talked to Kwame about using the emblem, etc., and they asked the remnants of SNCC to merge with the Black Panther Party, and Kwame became the prime minister in the Black Panther Party, I believe it was in late 1967. The next speaker we have here, he's a former member of the Black Panther Party, and he worked diligently in the Black Panther Party and many other organizations, and now he's here in Cleveland, working to support the All-African People Revolutionary Party. He spoke at African Liberation Day a number of times, etc. We're glad to have him here. He's working here to help us organize the African United Front of Cleveland, work to help free Abdul Haq. The list goes on and on and on. Brother Abdul Haq.
Name of God and grace and mercy upon you. I bid you in Jesus, our long labor and the merits of God be upon you. The other thing that I would like to say, the All-African People Revolutionary Party from St. Louis, I was there. We had the same service there in St. Louis Saturday, and they said they greetings from St. Louis. Also, Sister Connie Tucker over here, and I spent yesterday morning with Sister Connie Tucker, and when she went back home, she called me and we talked for an hour. She was one of the sisters that helped get blood for Brother Kwame Ture, and she also traveled and went to Cuba with her brother Kwame Ture, and her and I was in the same organization when Kwame Ture came to Florida. The organization was called JOMO, a military organization, and that was in the early 60s. The other thing that I heard a lot of people say, but you really want to attribute to Brother Kwame Ture. Kwame Ture's whole theme was organize, organize, organize. See, that's how we can keep him living. Organization is the highest form of any African revolution. Mobilization is one of the deepest forms. Organization, what Kwame tells us, is the highest form. Mobilization, we mobilized the many men in Washington who couldn't come back and organize. And so we're saying that the highest form to recognize Brother Kwame is organize, organize, organize. My thing is that a unorganized people are subject to slavery any given time. Unorganized people had our school taken away from us. Unorganized people had the police come into our community and murder and bruise our brothers. Unorganized people have the crack dealers and drug dealers taking control of our community. Unorganized people fall into slavery any given time. Brother Ture says, organize, organize, organize. And to show you what he is saying, that his physical body, the physical wasting away his body, did not stop him from organizing, organizing, organizing. Even when he was wasting away, it did not stop him from organizing, organizing. The last time I saw him was a couple years ago, and he came to Oakland to speak, and the Zionists were there. And they came into the auditorium and turned their back on him. But he was so weak that he sat in a chair. He was sitting in the chair, he was standing tall. And
Brother Muhammad and I went downstairs to see him. And when we were getting up to leave, after he got to speaking, I said, brother, could I say a prayer for you? And the brother said, yeah, you can say a prayer for me. Because I love the Muslim prayer. So I said a prayer for him, and he smiled. And he kept on saying, keep on struggling. But the best way to give something to Brother Kwame Ture is organize. Our people without organization, once again, are such a slave. And if you don't have organization, that means you got toleration. That means you're not organized, you're retarded. Everything in nature that Allah has created got organization in it. Yes, sir. And we have to have organization in our community to move this thing forward. And I like to say, there are all kinds of people rubbing their fire. When Kwame Ture and email Jamil back then on the wraparound, joined the Black Panther Party, the membership increased. When I was in St. Louis, the imam from the nation, the minister from the Nation of Islam, said Kwame Ture came to their temple one day and spoke. And when he got to speaking, half an audience joined the Nation of Islam. The other thing that Kwame Ture does not deal with religion in a narrow way. Nkrumah was a Christian, and Ture was a Muslim. But they came together and said, let's do all that people in the party. They weren't that this is going to be a Christian party, but this is going to be a Muslim party, because if there was Muslims that have organized, this is the Christian brothers, and this is the Muslim brothers. And they all came together and said, we're going to form the all African people brothers in their party. Organize. Thank you very much for that, dude. We thank everybody who came out today, and thank all our supporters who helped us to build all African people represented parties. And we want to frontline the revolution. And I want to introduce to you one of our women in our All African Women's Revolutionary Union, Deborah California. She's going to talk to you about our All African Women's Revolutionary Union.
I want to thank all of our Alliance and Brothers and Sisters organizations for taking time to share and give a few thoughts on Brother Kwame Ture. Those of us who know Brother Kwame have the luxury of having some lifelong connection with him. With many of the speakers today that didn't even know the brother, and yet we still inspired through his words, more particularly through his work. So we thank you for coming out to help us celebrate his transition. The Revolutionary Women's Union of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, we extend our heartfelt condolences to the biological family of Brother Kwame. The women and children of our party are especially grateful that Brother Kwame became our ideological brother and comrade in the struggle. Because we weren't biologically connected to him at all, yet when he came around to any place in the United States, we know, you know, he welcomed us as family, and we treated us as family. In fact, Kwame always said, put me in a house with a brother or sister who's working for Africa. Don't leave me stuck up in some hotel somewhere, left alone and be knocked out at any one moment. So he, in fact, opened himself to us, and we, in fact, did the same thing. In fact, Brother Kwame's life is a lesson in the process of conscious development of a person that has revolutionary self-consciousness. Right. In fact, if you look at the name Kwame Ture, it's a synthesis of the people he most respected, not because of who they were, but what they did for their respective countries. Brother Kwame Nkrumah, President of Ghana, and Brother Ahmed Sekou Ture, President of the nation-state of Kenya. His name, in fact, is a synthesis of both of those two elements, as Brother Ahmed Sekou said. That you have to have this mix, and Kwame was, in fact, that mix. In fact, the ideology of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party is Nkrumah Tourism, which again takes that synthesis from both contributions, from both brothers' struggle. And that ideology teaches us that knowledge is gained through consistent, dynamic interplay between theory and practice.
Right.
You got to work it, think it, and you got to put it into play. You just can't be in a university or a library studying books without putting your thoughts and words into practice. And the party tried to do it. And Kwame Ture also tried and did do that through his work in life and struggle. Kwame Ture's contribution to African women and youth is best understood from this perspective of theory and practice throughout his life. Throughout his life, he had an unfailing commitment and service to the African masses. He participated in the work amongst the people. He organized the people, improved him through his work, and among the masses he built, and we helped him build, and we are building a revolutionary mass political party, the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. We are especially indebted to Brother Kwame for his foresight, his wisdom, and commitment in that he helped push the establishment of the All-African Women's Revolutionary Union and the Young Pioneers Institute. Both are institutions within the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, and they are the means through which political education is pursued and attained. These structures, the Union, the All-African Women's Revolutionary Union, and the Young Pioneers Institute, are the result and in fact are critical to the process of developing self-conscious African masses. In 1980, the All-African People's Revolutionary Party called for and founded the All-African Women's Revolutionary Union to take its vanguard role in promoting the conditions of African women to be full participants in the struggle and building of one unified socialist Africa by recruiting African women into revolutionary Pan-African parties and politically educating African men and women. At the same time, the party called for the establishment of the Young Pioneers Institute as a means to educate our youth. We don't have to know the details about Shaker to know that our youth are uneducated. The problems that you have here in Cleveland are global with respect to education of African youth, and that they are disenfranchised, they are disoriented, not self-balanced, and ultimately built or rather conditioned to move into another form of miseducation called the jail system. So we know that the problem is global, and the party has taken responsibility to take on the path of politically educating the youth and the women to try to change these conditions. The founding of the AAWRU is thus significant and a historic step because it provides the means for the conscious development of revolutionary African women's cadre. First, this decision is reflected in awareness of the multitude of contributions of women to the struggle. Our families have constantly struggled against colonialism, enslavement, capitalism, neo-colonialism, and imperialism. We know the roll call of sisters who have been in the forefront of the struggle. Some we can name like Yah Santawa and Vali Samara, Harriet Tubman, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ernestina Celia, Haja Malfoy Bangor, Amy Jock Garvey, and among others, as well as the ones that we can't mention because we have not done the research to yet uncover those unknown sister strugglers and freedom fighters. Further, this decision to establish the union was in a recognition of the vital role of women's wing in revolutionary parties. In fact, all revolutionary parties have their sister female counterparts. We know that the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, the Zimbabwe African National Union, the Southwest African People's Organization, and the Azanian People's Organization all have their revolutionary women's wing, because we know that if women in revolution rather than does not have the full participation of women will fail. The union, therefore, is a part of Kwame Ture's direct legacy to the AAPRP, to African women, and to our children and the struggling masses in general. It is the responsibility of Pan-Africanist revolutionaries everywhere to continue on this correct path towards the redemption of Africa. All revolutionaries must follow Kwame's lead in building revolutionary political parties. We must press forward in joining revolutionary organizations, and we must push the continued building of revolutionary women's ranks inside these political formations. The union as a structure within the AAPRP is continuing on this course of developing women cadres armed with ideology and the skills and techniques of political organization and struggle. Since power begins with conception, we are institutionalizing the structures for continuous political education and correct application of revolutionary ideology. One priority is to institutionalize the union at assembly meetings and through the central structure of the organization. In fact, the organization has a leadership body which half are women. All of us must begin to work towards a political transformation. Further, as an organization and as a union, we are prioritizing the recruitment and retention of women and sisters generally, and especially those African sisters born on the continent. Because we know ultimately that's where our struggle has to go back to, as Brother Kwame constantly told us. In keeping with the primacy of Africa, we will prioritize relationships with revolutionary women's wings, such as the Ghanaian Women's Revolutionary Union of the PCG, the Democratic Union of Women of the PAIGC, the Pan-African Women's Association of Panafu, and the Azanian Women's Organization within Azamu. We work together to encourage and help organize consistent ideological training and political development and cultivating a process amongst sisters in these organizations so that we become mutually supportive of each other, ensuring strong women cadre, which will ultimately be in the forefront of the struggle towards redemption of Africa. Finally, the union is in the vanguard of the struggle for social revolution. Social revolution will restore egalitarian relationships amongst the African masses. Social revolution is a process of transforming corrupt, abusive human relations produced by a dominant, oppressive capitalist culture and replacing those actions with relations guided by revolutionary values, ethics, and ideology. Therefore, the social revolution is in fact an act of cultural revolution and will establish revolutionary African personality. The social revolution therefore must have and stand firmly behind it an intellectual revolution, a revolution in which our thinking and philosophy is directed towards the redemption of society. Thus, people have to be ideologically trained and armed to remain conscious and stay and hold the line no matter what the circumstances are of life. Hence, the All-African Women's Revolutionary Union and the All-African People's Revolutionary Party will continue the work chartered by our revolutionary comrade, Brother Kwame Ture. We are consciously developing revolutionary cadres who will march forward ever in the service of Africans in the African Revolution, guided by the improvements of Ture's ideology and armed with the skills and techniques of political organizational struggle. And as always, our party, as Brother Kwame always said for us, is ready for revolution. Thank you for
First, I'd like to say, Assalamu alaikum. I represent a family of revolutionary Pan-Africans who are also scientific associates, and some of us are revolutionary Muslims.